Welcome to Sampler Sunday. Today I'll show you how to turn your sampler page into a color spectrum collage panel. This is a great way to see how a palette works together and help build your confidence with color. This is also a great reference tool to have with you when you're working on your collages. Here are some color spectrum collage panels from some of our other collections. This is the Jeweled Leaves collection, Teal Tango, the Frog, Penguin, and the Cozy Nook collection. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Serendipity Soul sampler page. I'm going to move that aside, and I have the sampler page here. All of our samplers are laid out in the same way, so this is a palette on its own. We have the painted papers, which I've created through acrylic painting techniques, and then these last three sections are pattern papers. They all started with sketches. Within the pattern papers, we have three different sections. We have the darker value papers, the lighter value papers, which bring contrast to your collages, and then the black and white scale. So we have from white to black with two gray scales in between. The first thing that you'll want to do when you're creating your color spectrum collage panel is to cut the strips from this page. And I've already gone ahead and done that. And you could use either a pair of scissors or a paper trimmer. I tend to use a paper trimmer for that. I do have a getting started video that shows you how to cut the sampler, so you can check that out. The link will be down below. What we'll want here is a substrate. I'm using a chipboard. This is 4 inches by 8 inches. I have a ruler. This isn't for perfection, but more for planning, and I'll show you what I mean here. And then the other thing that we want is the color wheel that came with the sampler. I also have some Mod Podge. This is matte Mod Podge in a deli container, and I have my brush here. And then anytime I'm collaging, I like to have a wet and a dry cloth just to keep my hands and my workspace clean and dry. What we're going to do now is to line these color strips along the color wheel here, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is a paper that's mostly yellow. There's some oranges in it. I'm going to line it up here. This one has mostly orange and then red. So I'm just matching to the colors on the color wheel. This is the reddish purple. We have yellow. This is kind of a yellow orange. Back to red purple. This one is within the red purple. So this is like the pink down here. Yellow. This is mostly red, red, orange. This one's closer to orange, so I'm going to slide it in there. And then I'm going to put my grayscale down below, just like this. Now the Serendipity Soul Color Palette, this is made up of warm colors. So the warm colors are on this side of the color wheel. And they're also analogous colors. So analogous colors are colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel. And when colors are analogous, they blend into each other and harmonize very well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to now organize these how I laid them down. So just stack them in order. Oh, that red one snuck out, so that's going to go there. And that there. And then for the grayscale, I'm going to go from white to black at the bottom. So this is the order I'm going to glue them down. I'm going to move this aside. We'll move this over. I'm lining up my chipboard with the ruler. So it's 8 inches. So 8 should be at this end. What we're doing is we're going to glue down 16 strips to an 8-inch panel. So that means that we're going to have a 1/2 inch showing for each strip. And just to help me out, I'm going to tape this down. This is painter's tape. And I'll tape my ruler down as well. I want my wet and dry cloth handy. So that's right there. And my Mod Podge. Maybe I'll put that up there. I'm going to take my first strip, take the cover off the Mod Podge, and I'm going to coat the back with a layer of Mod Podge. And starting on this side, I'm going to just press that down. I'm putting enough Mod Podge on there so it slides a little bit so I can get it right where I want it. And then choosing the next piece, doing the same thing. So a nice coat of Mod Podge on the back. And this one I'm lining up to the 1/2 inch mark. Again, it doesn't have to be exact, but I want to be able to plan it. I don't want to end up at the end and realize I don't have enough space for the last couple of pieces. So that's why I do that ruler there. So this is going to be at the 1 inch mark. And then piece by piece, moving over 1/2 inch for each piece. If I find that I have a little bit of another palette right on the edge, I can see it kind of there. I can either trim that off now or I could flip it over if there's no color on this edge. So that this one I'm just flipping over. And then I'm going to continue on for the rest of the pieces and I'll speed the video up. If my workspace is starting to get messy and the paper's sticking, I just clean that up with my wet cloth and then dry it. And then making sure my hands aren't sticky. Now I'm at the last 2 pieces, so I want to remove this tape here because these last 2 are going to hang over the edge of my substrate. So this one is at 7 inches. And then the last at 7.5. Now I'm going to gently lift this up so it's not stuck to my silicone mat. I'll move that aside and then I'll clean up my workspace. Actually, I'm going to move this off to the side there. I want to make sure that I cap my Mod Podge so that it doesn't dry out. And then we'll set that aside. Just tidy up there. Here's the panel, and we're going to let that dry, and then we'll cut the back along the edges. All right, I'm back, and this is completely dry. So one way to cut it is to simply take a pair of scissors and just follow the edge. So just like that. And I'll do that here. It's a little tricky. So that's why I'm going to show you one other option. It does require another tool, but this is one of my favorite things to use. This is a cutting mat and a rotary cutter. So this is typically used for fabric. But when you have a thick substrate, this doesn't work so well if your substrate is paper because you want a hard edge to go against. But what I'm going to do is press down and just follow that edge. And I'm pressing, I have quite a bit of pressure on that. Sometimes I need to go a couple times. Now look at that. It's a nice clean edge. And I can even do it when there's just a tiny bit. So pressing hard, and it'll just get these little strips out. So this is a rotary cutter and a cutting mat. I'm going to move that aside. And then the last thing we want to do is coat this entire surface with Mod Podge. That will give it a protective layer. And it also brings out the brilliance of the inks from the printer paper. So I'm just putting a nice coat of Mod Podge on the entire surface. So working my way down. For these panels, you can see I'm holding it. I think it's a little bit easier to hold it and do it rather than doing it on the surface, but whatever works for you. I'm just going to grab the edge and do the last bit. So set that down. Make sure I cover my Mod Podge because I'm done with it for this session, and just tidy up. We're going to let this dry and then we'll be right back. All right, I'm back. This is completely dry. So the substrate bent a little bit as it dried, but that's okay. What I'll typically do is I can just flatten it out just by putting a little bit of pressure on it. This piece we can use for collages, so I'll put that with my scraps from the same palette, and we'll find a use for that. And I hope you enjoyed this session here today, and I hope you try it out with the other palettes. Again, you can do it with any of the samplers that we have available to you. Thank you so much for joining me today.